So this morning, we're going to focus on the cost for those who follow Jesus. Today in our community, there seems to be a continuous discussion about how much things cost. And we constantly hear about how prices for some things, like our housing and our water and our sewer and insurance and electricity, they keep going up and up and up, don't they? But then some of our items that we purchase, like smartphones and TVs, they keep going down and down and down. You can buy a TV for under $300 now, you know? But with all of this talk of prices, we wonder if money can actually buy everything. A few years ago, there was a MasterCard commercial that I think really helped make the point. That there are some things, some very important things that money just can't buy. And you know what that is? It's love, isn't it? Back in 1963, the American singer, songwriter, and civil rights activist and entrepreneur, Sam Cooke, had a hit titled song named "The Best Things in Life Are Free." You all remember that song? We love to get things free, don't we? 2 for the price of 1. Kids stay for free with a paid parent, or kids eat free with an adult meal. I remember, what did you get? You used to get a toaster when you opened up a savings account, or free steak knives, or something like that. But if we are truly honest with ourselves, we have to acknowledge that nothing is completely free, is it? If we don't pay for it, somebody else does. And so it is with God, with us and God. We don't have to pay the penalty for our sins. We can't earn our way to being right with God. The gift of salvation is free to us, but not free to Jesus, who gained our salvation on the cross. What is free for us is very costly to God. This morning we learned that being a disciple of Christ is costly, and Jesus wants us to be fully informed of these costs. In our gospel lesson today, Jesus says that sacrifice is an essential part of discipleship. He says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brother and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. Jesus, he wasn't calling us to hate our families. The New Testament was originally written in Greek, and the Greek word that is sometimes translated to hate is meseo. And meseo has a range of meanings. It can mean hate. It can mean disregard. It can also mean to be indifferent to. We also need to understand that people in Jesus' day, they often use hyperbole to make a point. And you know, hyperbole is an exaggerated, dramatic language intended to get our attention, to just stop us in our tracks and cause us to say, what did he say? So Jesus calls people to meseo, father and mother, to hate them or disregard them or to be indifferent to them. And here's what I believe Jesus meant. He meant that we need to put God and godly things above the most precious things in our lives. Father, mother, wife, child, brother, sister. We have godly obligations to all those people, but our first obligation is to God. Jesus was driving home the point that being his disciple is serious business. That true discipleship means putting Jesus above everything else. So Jesus says, and whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. You know, in Jesus' day, a cross wasn't a lovely piece of jewelry that we wore around our neck, is it? A cross was a cruel instrument of torture. A person who was carrying his cross was on his way to his death. Then Jesus warns us to count the cost of discipleship. He says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? You know, Jesus' point here was that we should give some thought to what it means to be a Christian before we take that leap, because Jesus has high expectations for his disciples. In his book, Stories for the Soul, Jim Dennison tells of a mission trip he went to in East Malaysia for a summer. And while there, he worshiped at a small Malaysian church. And one Sunday, he noticed an old worn-out suitcase sitting near the wall. And when he asked the pastor about it, the pastor pointed out a teenage girl who had been baptized that morning. He said, her father said that if she was baptized as a Christian, she could never come home again. So she brought her luggage. Now that, my friends, is the price to pay for the decision to follow Jesus. She had a commitment there. She gave up her family to follow Jesus and become a Christian. And when I read that story, I wondered to myself, I wonder whatever became of that girl. Was she condemned to live on the streets, living hand to mouth? Did anyone help her? I hope, and I'm sure they did. If following Jesus for that girl meant leaving her family, Jesus surely intended for the members of that congregation to take care of her and lead her forward as a disciple of Christ. When I read that story, I thought, by bringing this girl into the congregation's midst, Christ was testing their faith. He was giving them a chance to do something wonderful for him. I wonder if they actually accepted that challenge and were equal to it. I don't know if anybody's heard about this, but there's a movement around the globe today that people want to be a different kind of Christian. The movement's called prosperity gospel. Anybody ever heard that? The prosperity gospel? It emphasizes that Christ wants to make his followers wealthy. Some years ago, a billboard for a Benny Hinn revival. Y'all remember Benny Hinn? It said this. It said, business breakthrough, special prayers for your business and your finances. Today, in an interview, Hinn says that he went too far with that. He says, today the idea of abundance and palatial homes and cars and bank accounts, the focus is wrong. It's so wrong. Benny has asked forgiveness for his extravagant living when he was younger. And the prosperity gospel is a movement that started here in the United States, but it spread throughout the world. And people do find it attractive, because it promises material rewards for discipleship. It tells people that following Jesus will just give them an abundant life, will make them rich. But Jesus said, in the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. I don't believe that Jesus meant that literally, any more than I believe that he wanted us to hate our fathers and our mothers. This is another example of hyperbole, exaggerated dramatic language intended to get our attention. But Jesus, he clearly meant that we cannot be his disciples if we allow this God space at the center of our lives to be filled up with the love of money or the love of possessions. Jesus clearly meant that being a Christian involves making some sacrifices. And how that works out in our lives differs from person to person. There's no standard template to make that happen. For me personally, it meant giving up a career at AT&T and going into ministry so that I could serve this beautiful small community church. For one Malaysian girl, it meant bringing her suitcase to church one morning. We don't talk about sacrificial discipleship very much, do we? But we should. Jesus clearly thought that sacrifice was important. In fact, in Jesus' mind, Sacrifice and discipleship were inseparable. As in the 1955 Sinatra song, Love and Marriage, it says you can't have one without the other, right? You can't be Jesus' disciple without making some sacrifices. So I'd like to leave you this morning with 3 questions. I don't expect you to stand up and answer these questions, unless you really feel led to, if you don't have to. But I would like for you to reflect on them over this next week, okay? I believe that Christ has something important to do with your life. It might be big, like becoming a missionary, or it might be teaching a Sunday school class, or helping with the youth group. But I'm hoping that these questions, these 3 questions, will help you find your calling and to fulfill it. So here they are. First question. What have you given Jesus lately? What have you given him this week, this month, this year? What have you given Jesus lately? Second question. What could you be giving Jesus that you aren't already giving? Is Jesus calling you to spend more time strengthening your devotional life? Is he calling you to go out and help with the hungry and with the homeless? Is he calling you to work with young people in our church or in our community? What could you be giving Jesus that you aren't already giving? And my third question is, if you were to put Jesus first, truly first in your life, how would that change your life? What would you start doing? What would you stop doing? How would putting Jesus first in your life change you? So take those questions home with you today, my friend, and ponder them this week. What have you given Jesus lately? And what could you be giving him that you aren't already giving? And if you were to put Jesus first, how would that change your life? If the answers to those questions suggest that maybe you need to start moving in a new direction, trust Jesus.